welcome to another live demonstration. Today I want to introduce you to the Inktense Paint Pan Set. So we know about the pencils and the blocks and how wonderful bright the colours are. Well, Derwent has now brought out this wonderful unique Inktense formula in the pan set. So this, you know, you can travel with it. It's really nice to be able to have Inktense in another format. So I'll talk to you about it as we go through. So as with any new product, I will do a swatch. So 12 colours in the set. The pans aren't yet being able to be bought separately, but because of the strong colour, they will last for ages. They're all light fast rating 8, which is the highest light fast rating, so no worry of fading with the colours. And they go on paper, they go on card, they also go on fabric. And with any Inktense product, the key to activating the permanence of the colour is water. So plenty of water to make sure that the pigment is activated, and then they'll be fairly permanent. You can do little swatches like that, which I will keep for reference, or take it up another level. Again, this is really a fun thing to do. I wanted to see how opaque they were. I did notice that the mid ultramarines, actually, you use quite a lot of it out of the pan. It's quite a transparent colour. But what you can do is have fun with these colour charts, because not only does it surprise you with the colours you can make with, say, even a blue and a yellow. You make surprising colours. But if you add a little bit more, let's take the blue and the red. So here I've had a little bit more blue than I did red and blue. And this one I had a little bit more red than I did blue. So look at those two colours you can make from the same two. And again, you can make even more. These were just two colours I made from mixing those two colours. And there's some wonderful earthy colours that can be made, as well as some lovely bright and oranges and greens, with colours that you don't think about putting together, like the greens and the purples. I think they make some really lovely earthy browns and greys, and the wonderful array of greys you can make by mixing what colour that natural brown with the mid ultramarine makes a lovely blue-grey. And again, you can make it a little darker by adding a little bit more brown. So this is it seems time-consuming, but you actually really do get into it, and you've often surprised yourself with the colours you can make. What I want to have a look at is the permanence. Now, like I say, with Inktense, pencils, blocks, the key is activating the pigment with water, and that will make it much more permanent. And what I mean by permanent is how it stays on the paper, i.e. you can layer without disturbing the layers beneath. With watercolours, they are reactable. With these, they're not as reactable, if not reactable at all. In the set, you get a water brush, and this is a mini water brush. So you have a little barrel which has a nice stopper in which you can fill with water, which I've done. Then you just put your unit together, and there you have is a lovely water brush which just gives you water on the go. So a really nice, easy travel set. So this is practice paper, and again the permanence will depend on the paper used. And I'm just going to see how well the colour is staying. So that's fairly permanent, not much movement there. Not much movement there. Little bit of movement there. Again, this will be paper dependent, and depending on how wet I've got the colours. But with a watercolour, so they're fairly good. There is a little bit of movement, and that will be the pigment on the top hasn't quite been wet enough. But you can see not a huge amount of movement, whereas with a watercolour this will have moved much more, and some are much more permanent than others. So again, test, but you can see how getting them wet again, they don't move greatly. So they are pretty permanent colours. If I really rubbed in or used some materials, I'm sure I can lift it off. But on the whole, it means layering and glazing is much easier than with watercolour. And you can see how bright these colours are. So I'll talk about the Inktense product as I do a little demonstration. So I've drawn out, and I like the pencil marks to be part of the work. So I've drawn it in a little bit of detail. The marks are a bit stronger than normal because I want you to see them. And because it's a travel set, what you'll often do on the go is you'll work quite quickly and just get ideas and colours down. What I'm doing is I'm just squeezing a little bit of water into the yellow because I know it's quite a strong colour, and that will pick up the colour I'm looking for. So you can see here how strong that colour is, and I'm just going to work quite quickly and just give myself a wash of colour. It's not going all over, and occasionally I'm squeezing the barrel just to activate and bring a little bit more water down when I want to dilute the colour. I'm not going to work really carefully because I think I've done the drawing enough, and you'll see I'm going to leave areas of white. It's something you do, it's kind of like a sketch that you would do out on the go or travelling, whereas when you don't have the time to bring it to the like you do in the studio where you can just come back and work. So I'm going to work quite quickly, just as you would do outside. Oh, that's the wrong colour. So just putting a wash of the yellow down and squeezing the barrel just to wet the paper. And you can see there, I'm not completely covering the whole area because I want some white areas, and I can go back in. So I'm adding water to the pan just so it's wet, and just bringing out the shapes of the petals. So again, nice loose wash. I'm not overly worried about detail because I think I've done that in the pencil. Just going to do this, add a little bit of an orange colour because the flower's slightly more orange than I can see. I'm just making sure that I'm diluting the orange because again it's a strong colour. I want the yellow to shine through. This is all done wet at the moment, just so I'm working quickly. Again, not overly thinking, I'm just getting the idea of where the colour is. Just taking down that yellow to a little bit more of an orange. I could have mixed it on my palette to get the colour I'm doing, but I like the colours to flow together. So the overall palette is quite light, made of plastic, got the 5 wells for mixing, and you can actually take this tray out. I noticed that, and you've got more wells for mixing if you wanted to put the tray separately. That's quite nice orange. Let's go back to this one. Just add a little bit more colour. Take that bright yellow down a little bit. Bring some colour to there. So even now, I think you can see how the colour's starting to build up. Now into the red, and again I'm dropping it in because this is quite strong. I'm just going to bring up so this is, I'm going to come back into it. I just want to give myself a little bit of an indication of where the stripe comes in the middle, and as the paper's wet it is bleeding, but I don't mind that. I quite like that kind of texture. I'm just trying to think, look back at where the red goes on these petals. It goes down the middle. I'm just trying to distinguish between. So once it's dried, I'll go back and sharpen a little bit. But at the moment, I'm just putting colour down. So it comes through.
Mind your head, Anita.
Sorry.
Okay.
And because it's strong at the bottom and it is on top, I'm just working from the bottom of the petal up to have the strength of colour. And that's diluted itself. But what it's done is just give me an idea of where colour is. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm going to go on to this wonderful green. And you'll see, I'm not going to be overly careful because I will do some negative painting, which is where I will bring the leaf colour back. I just want to, so I'm able to keep the flow of wet by just squeezing the barrel, and that means I can alter the tones of that colour as I'm painting. Very loose, very light. Moment, just putting colour down, and once it's dry, put the detail in. If you are out and about, you don't want to spend a lot of time on one subject, so you tend to quickly put things down, especially with watercolours, just to get an idea of the shape, the colour, the atmosphere of the surrounding situation you're in. It could be sunny, it could be cloudy. And like I say, I can keep wetting the paper. So this one brush is just doing everything I would keep doing. I'd wet the paper and then go back in with paint. But because I'm able to keep adding water without dipping in, I can just really get on with this quickly. Page is wet. Just going to add some of the racing green, which is a lovely dark green. And this is where I can start to bring out a little bit of the negative painting, which is painting the darker colours behind the leaves. I'm not going to be totally precise with this at the moment because it's wet in wet. I just want it to create its own shapes at the moment. Just give myself some dark and light areas. I can work on other tones once it's dried or starts to dry. Then I can see what I need to work on. I like working like this because a lot of it is you're at the mercy of how the paint dries. But that's part of the beauty about using a medium, a water medium like this. But you've got the strong Inktense formula in these colours. The negative painting, just bringing out the dark colours and leaving the light areas. Just under the petals, they will have cast shadow on the leaves. So I'm just picking up a little bit of that tonal value. Maybe a little bit darker here. I know I can go back into it. All I'm doing is give myself an idea. Just round the leaves now, I'm starting to just sharpen. I'm adding water to the pan, just because I know it's such a strong colour. I'm just sharpening a little bit because the leaf petals are sharp compared to the background, and I don't want to bring all that darkness through. So just making sure I'm catching up with any areas. I'm going to let that dry, just so I can see how it dries and where I need to work on it. Just go back into the middle, that wonderful yellow. And I'm not going to do each little colour, I'm just going to drop in drops of colour, just to add texture. A little bit of the green.
Anita,
Yes,
I have a question for you.
yes.
Ian would like to know, can you put watercolour over the dry Inktense painting?
Yes, yes, absolutely, you should do. It's dependent on the paper. The great thing about Inktense is the way it works on fabric. So you put it on fabric, get it very wet, and it's then able to be washed in cold water. But with this, it should work again with watercolour. The only difference really is the permanence. You can see that when we tried moving it again, it didn't move. But yes, it works very well with water. It doesn't watercolour. It doesn't create a barrier that prevents you working on the watercolour paper. So yeah, work with both. So you can see that's drying, and it dries very differently to how you put it on, which is why you sometimes just have to go back in. I'm going to now pick up the red and just, that is a strong colour. So now it's dried, I can just sharpen and add a little bit of detail to the flowers. I want it to be painted quite quickly, quite loosely, but I do think sometimes you do need to look at the detail, because that really is what makes this the type of flower it is, rather than just a yellow flower with red stripes. So the shape of the petals I had down in pencil, and now I'm just adding those crucial little details after I've put a good wash of colour on. And putting a good wash of colour on first actually takes away that fear of, oh, I don't know where to start. Just let the paint do it for you, and then it's not as scary. Like you say, you can't always know how it's going to turn out. And I like just being able to use this one brush as well. Quite a lazy painter, just having to have the brush. I'm not squeezing, so I'm not making sure I've got quite strong colour straight from the pan. And I will be able to layer and build up if it's not strong enough. But the brush, because it's made of a synthetic, will hold its point really nicely. So it's red in here, I've missed that one. I know I'm working from a photograph because we're not outside. If you're outside, you'd probably be able to get a little bit closer. So finding this red is fading because it's obviously still quite wet. So just adding a little bit more. Okay, that's fine. So the dark middle bit, I'm going to use the purple and the racing green. And I know this works because firstly I did it on the colour chart and I knew how well those colours worked together. So just adding the dark detail in the middle, and I'll use this colour as a glaze as well a little later on. Just looking at where the dark areas are in the middle of this plant. And I'm going to wet, so water is there instantly from the brush, and I'm going to see if I can, need a little bit stronger glaze and bring out some of these darker areas. Just damping off my brush, it might be a bit too wet. It is. So let's mix some more colour. You can see there the dark behind. And all these little areas of dark will just help bring the leaves forward and push other leaves back. So again, I'm negative painting because I'm looking at the dark areas, which makes the light areas push forward. I'm probably not dark enough, but sometimes I prefer to do that because you can always come back and darken. So here, got some dark areas where obviously the red bit is folded round like this, so I'm just trying to indicate dark areas around here. I'm just bringing a little bit of detail. So the petals come all the way down into the middle part, and they have ridges. Just drop some. The dark colour you can't see as well on this photograph, but I need to give it a little bit more depth than I'm getting. I'm just adding some of this. Add a bit more texture. So as artists, we will tend to see a little bit more dark and light than is actually there in reality. Still a bit wet. Stand back. What I might do is might just work on the leaves because that's dried and I actually want it a little bit stronger. Just the darker you have areas, that pushes everything forward a little bit more. So that wasn't dark enough. And now I'm just going to add it a little bit darker. Can't remember where that leaf goes round, but it's going round here now. That's my fault for not looking at the subject. I lost where areas were. So I know when you're out in the field you will be looking a little bit more closely than I am at the moment. So bring that. And you can see how that's pushed forward. It's really dark in here. What I am doing is being quite careful because I know how strong these colours are. I don't want them to take over in all the areas. And I want to see some of the colours underneath. Okay, that's quite loose. Stand back. Okay. Just need to just damp off my brush and start to get that stronger. Just want to sharpen the leaf shape. And bring back a little bit of tonal value. I don't feel I've got just at the moment. So that has dried quite light, so I'm just going to use the ink black, which I didn't want to use at first because I want to keep some colour, and I'm just adding it quite lightly. So the ink black I know is quite a strong colour, and that I found out through the colour chart which colours are more dominant. I didn't want to put it on straight away because it's not actually a black colour I'm looking for. I'm looking for a different colour, but you can see there I need to just bring some colour up. It's looking a little bit isolated there. Take that through. The lights make it a little bit more difficult for me to see tonal value at the moment, but I can see that it needs a little bit more. Going back into areas which I might have overlooked. So now I am looking a lot more at the picture I've got in front of me, just to, and as I'm working round, I'm just thinking about which areas I'm working on, because it's very easy to lose yourself. So this doesn't work as well on the photograph. I'm just going to strengthen, give it a little bit more detail. So this is where, as an artist, I can see areas that need a little bit more work. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can just strengthen the leaves by adding a little bit more green. So able to go over the colours and not move them. And I don't know how wet it is, I might not be able to bring out some, but I quite like it when it's wet, that you can get a feathery, softer look. What I'm going to do is just merge a little bit. So leaf. And this one comes round. Darken. And let's work on this one. Stand back. I think that's probably it, actually. I like some of the areas I've left. I like the colours. I'm working quickly. That's the idea. It's a travel set. I've used not a huge amount of water on that whole painting, and it's just so handy being able to squeeze it out and get it wet straight away. And the brush works really nicely to be able to have a little bit of control. So that is the new Derwent Inktense Pan Travel Set. So that Inktense formula, that unique Inktense formula you find in the blocks and pencils, now in a travel pan set, which is really exciting. So join us at the weekend for live streaming with 6 international watercolour artists at the International Watercolour Masters Exhibition at Weston Park in Staffordshire, which is quite exciting. So join us then.